we're back.
All right, Hare Krishna. We're back live. Lives of the Vaishnava Acharyas. So as I was saying, the importance of historians and, poets, if you will, songwriters. We have an interesting phenomenon now that those people that write history, those people that give the past time. We just went down.
The monitor's out. You're still live.
Oh, the monitor's out, but we're still live. Okay. Hare Krishna. But those people that write history and pass on the documentation of the Lord's activities rarely have any qualification of their own. You have endless scholastic books about the Goswamis or the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by personalities that are less than qualified. Fortunately for us, we do have the Chaitanya Caritamrita. The Chaitanya Caritamrita is considered to be the most sublime work about the history of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And it is written by Krishnadasa Kaviraja Goswami. Now, Krishnadasa Kaviraja Goswami was not an arrogant scholastic personality. He was not a proud poet, someone who was eager to spread his own fame and glories. Actually, to this point, we know very little about Krishnadasa Kaviraja Goswami. We know that he was born 1496, somewhere in that time period, in the district of Nadia, to a family of physicians, and they lived in a village called Naihati. Naihati was part of the greater Nadia area. The father of Krishnadasa Kaviraja Goswami was Bhagirata, and his mother's name was Srimati Sunanda. Now, these two personalities, as I mentioned, the father was a physician, and he did also have a younger brother, and this younger brother's name was Shyam. Well, this is almost the extent of the history we have of his previous life before becoming attached to the devotional service of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We need to adjust these two things here. There we go. All right. So his father, his story goes, his father died when he was the age of 6, and he and his brother were sent to the paternal aunt's home where they were raised. And from his early childhood, Krishnadasa Kaviraj showed a very strong inclination towards renunciation. He had an utter lack of drive, if you will, for material enjoyment, for sense gratification. He was also, in this mood of renunciation, very detached from personal glorification. This is why in the Chaitanya Caritamrita we find very little information about him. Now, having given this presentation that I just spoke of, Krishnadasa Kaviraj is one of those interesting personalities that there is a bit of contradiction about his history. In his own introduction to the Chaitanya Caritamrita, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur mentions about Krishnadasa Kaviraj Goswami's ancestry that we really don't know the names of his parents. Now, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati mentions it recently, and this means recently in Bhaktisiddhanta's times, the 30s and the 40s. The name has been discovered, and this was in a book that's become very famous called the Bengali Dictionary, and Haridas's Gaudiya Vaishnava Abhidhana. These are two very well-known Vaishnava texts that research the lives of different Vaishnava acharyas, much as we make an effort to do with all of you. So it does mention in there that the names of the parents, as I said, Bhagirata and Srimati Sunanda. But this is even that not concrete evidence, as we have to remember that this was back in a time where things just weren't written down. We were only beginning at a time when the Shastras were written down, and birth certificates and parental knowledge, what to speak of the history of individuals. This just wasn't much of an issue. So some of these things may or may not be clear, but the best way we find is to present both sides of the research in this way. So we do know that Krishnadasa was his spiritual name. It was not his family name. The family name is not clearly given. The biographical information we do have about him, as little as it is found in the 5th chapter of the Adi Lila of Sri Chaitanya Caritamrita. And it mentions about his village, Naihati, which is near the Katwa district. Katwa, of course, is the place where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had his head shaved. So in that general area there. One thing we do know is that the Gaur-Nitai deities that Krishnadasa Kaviraj worshipped are still in that village, in the temple that's dedicated to him. We do have notation that there is additional information that can be found about Krishnadasa Kaviraj in a book called Ananda Ratnavali. So these 3 bits of pieces of information are there as far as the early life of Krishnadasa Kaviraja Goswami. It's generally understood who his parents were. It is accepted, as mentioned in the Chaitanya Caritamrita, that he had a younger brother named Shamdas, and it is accepted that he was very renounced in his childhood and left his family at a young age, which we'll go into a little bit later. Just checking up in the chat room here. And, okay, yeah, you guys are all talking about tattoos. We'll let that go. You can edit that part out. So, at any rate, equally in question is the Varnashrama status of Krishnadasa Kaviraj Goswami. There appear to be some different opinions about his caste, but this dilemma is much easier to resolve. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, here again, he mentions this, and I'm going to quote from him. Supporters of different ideas claim that Krishnadasa was born in one of 3 upper castes: the Brahmins, the Kayastas, or the Vaidyas. Kaviraj is a title given to those who have proven themselves by composing literary work and who have achieved renown for their quality in learned circles. Since this title is also given to Ayurveda physicians, some people hold that Krishnadasa was a Vaidya. This means an Ayurvedic doctor, physician. It is difficult to contradict those who claim that he is a Brahmin on the basis of his extraordinary mastery of the scriptures and other branches of learning. Now, this alone is not sufficient, because we know that many of the different Goswamis had amazing scholastic and literary and educational abilities at a young age. So, and not all of them were from Brahminical families. But this is one of the arguments being held. And because we see Chaitanya Caritamrita as the most eloquent testimonial to the so-called Brahminical status of Krishnadasa Kaviraj Goswami. Then the other side, the view that he is a Kayasta, is altogether not accepted as being illogical. It reveals a soft spot that he has for that caste when he praises the intelligence and managerial talents in his chapters in the Chaitanya Caritamrita dealing with Raghunath Das Goswami, who also came from that background. So we can see either of these 3 principles can be applied. We can accept that he was from a Brahminical background, and there's evidence of that. We can accept that he was from the Vaidya background, and there's evidence of that, and a Kayasta background, and there's apparent evidence of that. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati concludes that from this discussion we can see that Krishnadasa may have been born in any of these 3 castes. Whatever the case, and this is the essential point, the point that was driven home by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, driven home by Narottam Das Thakur, and all the acharyas following, and that is that whatever the case of his birth, a Vaishnava is a superior human being no matter what caste he takes his birth in. This is the important point, that Krishnadasa Kaviraj, by dint of his Vaishnava activities throughout the bulk of his life, completely removed any real deep consideration of his physical birth, because we know that the quality of a Vaishnava is due to activity, not birthright. All the scriptures state that a Vaishnava is still the best of humankind. It does not matter what caste he takes his birth in. That most sinful person who judges a Vaishnava in terms of his race or his caste will repeatedly be born in the lowest forms of life. This is a quote from the Chaitanya Bhagavat, the second section, the Madhya section, the 10th chapter, verse 100 to 102. So this is the strong opinion of all of our acharyas in the line of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that the birthright is not significant. Otherwise, what qualification would any of us have for engaging in the principle of devotional service? We're the most unqualified, and that's not just Jagai Madai humility. Jagai Madai genuinely were qualified. But the fact of the matter is that by their redemption at the hands of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they became qualified. Now, they are one of those examples you may say, well, they were Brahmin by birth, but by activity they were less than Brahmin. It was so heinous. Chandragupta, who is the scribe of Yamaraj, has stated that if I gathered 1,000 scribes, and from now till the end of time wrote, we could not reach the end of the sinful activities of Jagai and Madhai. Yeah. By the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, these two Brahma Bandhus, low-class Brahmins, were delivered. So this is the conviction of Vrindavan Das Thakur, whose appearance day was just this past week, by the way, and it is the presentation made by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So that is one of the unknown factors about the previous life of Krishnadasa Kaviraja Goswami that can be clearly settled. But it doesn't matter. As Yadevi has just written in the chat room, a Vaishnava is the best of human beings. Yes, this is very important. Manjesh is also piping in on this, principle that a Vaishnava is superior. And this isn't a type of false humility because a Vaishnava doesn't feel himself that way. But from a broader view, this is the reality. This is the view of Krishna himself. So, now, in addition, the third factor of his previous life, his marital status. This is also an unknown. Now, some people say that he was a lifelong brahmachari. And they say that because when he went to Vrindavan, if he had left a wife and children behind, or a family at least of some sort, that he would have likely mentioned this in telling about his degree of renunciation. In teaching to listeners about the principle of renunciation, he would have used that example of having left a wife and a family. This is what some people say. Srila Prabhupada writes on that point in this connection. After arriving in Vrindavan, Krishnadasa Kaviraj became indifferent to talking about his previous life and totally absorbed in Krishna Katha. This behavior is appropriate for someone in the third or fourth station of life and completely committed to devotional service. The Chaitanya Caritamrita is the composition of someone who has reached the status of a Paramahamsa and is completely beyond the four ashrams. He was known as Kaviraja Goswami to his spiritual family. Here again, very easy point to make a definitive conclusion of. Maybe he was married, maybe he wasn't. But we cannot say by his activities that it's indicative one way or the other, because the true nature of a renunciate, the true nature of a Paramahamsa, the true nature of someone who has given up these things is that they don't dwell on them. There's that famous story told of the two sannyasis, and it's told if you're a Buddhist in the Buddhist teachings, if you're a Vaishnava, it's told in the Vaishnava teachings, but it's about the two sannyasis that are traveling. And of course, in ancient times, sannyasis were very strict about association with women. And they came to a river, and there was an old woman that was trying to get across the river but could not. So the one sannyasi picked her up and carried her across, as his fellow sannyasi went with him, set her down, and they went on their way. After about 2 miles, The sannyasi that had not carried the woman turned and said, "I can't stand it any longer." He said, "How could you have picked that woman up and carried her across the river? It is completely against our vows." To which his god brother said, "I carried her across the river. You've carried her for the last 2 miles." So this is the mood. This is the type of renunciation that one shows, that one is not interested in dealing with these matters of life. So at any rate, Krishnadasa Kaviraja Goswami is accepted by his spiritual family, as Prabhupada says, as being of the highest caliber. Now, how did he get this type of blessing? Well, the main source of this blessing comes from his devotion to Sri Nityananda Ram. And his instruction from Lord Nityananda has an entire story that precedes it. It's a very, very wonderful story, because in the course in the Chaitanya Caritamrita of glorifying Lord Nityananda, he describes this very crucial event in his own life in dealing with Lord Nityananda. What had happened was that Krishnadasa Kaviraja, and this is before his coming to Vrindavan, this is one of the very few clues about his previous life that are given. Not in the form of a mystery, solve the puzzle, but in the form of just, some information is there because it leads to the importance of the story he's telling. So Krishnadas had organized a 24-hour kirtan party in his home. And amongst those who were invited was the very intimate and dear associate of Lord Nityananda, Manikatam Ramdas. Manikatam Ramdas was a very advanced, he's one of those dasa Gopals, the 12 cowherd associates in Nityananda, because he also lived in the same area right there that Krishnadas did. So Manikatam Ramdas, the nature of his devotional service was that he was in a constant state of trance. This would be brought about by his chanting of the holy name of Lord Nityananda. Anytime he would speak or sing or glorify the name of Nityananda, he would just fall into this incredible trance. So in that ecstatic mood, he would begin to whirl around and dance, and sometimes he would smack people. Not in the sense of punching them, although Advaitacharya did that one time. That's another story, we'll tell it another time. But in the sense of, smacking someone with his hands flying around, something like that, So, other times he would take his flute and hit people. So he had these two habits, Sometimes he would slap a person, and sometimes he would actually hit them with his flute. Because Manikatam Ramdas played the flute. He was a cowherd boy. That's what cowherd boys did. So in general, his ecstatic behavior was the cause of, how shall we say, astonishment to some of the guests at Krishnadasa's 24-hour kirtan program that were not accustomed to Manikatam Ramdas's behavior. And, some of them, the majority of them knew him, and they would offer their obeisances and, keep their distance from him, but respect him like that, But there was one devotee, Gunarnava Mishra, who was the pujari there. He had been actually engaged by the family as the pujari. It was a common activity that one pujari may take care of many different home deities. He would be a Brahmin supported by the dakshin he received, either in the form of foodstuffs or, donations, whatever it was, or clothing. And he would go home to home and perform different types of puja in the houses like that. So for this particular festival, Gunarnava Mishra was engaged as the pujari. And he didn't exactly display a respectful attitude towards Manikatam Ramdas. There's a very famous quote that if the pujari does not treat the devotees as he treats the Lord, then that deity worship is simply the worshipping of a stone idol. So this is very important. The pujari must be exemplary in his relationships with all the devotees. It was an indication, this lack of appreciation from Manikatam Ramdas, that Gunarnava Mishra did not have full faith in Lord Nityananda. What is that famous saying, love me, love my dog? If I show affection to someone's dog, then it's understood that I'll respect them as well. So this Gunarnava Mishra did not respect Lord Nityananda. And this caused Ramdas to become very angry, because Ramdas is a totally sold-out servant to Lord Nityananda. So he criticized Gunadeva Mishra. Gunadeva Mishra was performing the puja and ignoring him and not being very respectful. So Manikatam Ramdas accused him. He said, just look! Here is a second Romaharshana Sutta who has not come forward to show respect to Lord Balaram. This is in the Adi Leela 5th chapter, the Chaitanya Caritamrita, this story is told. So Gunadeva Mishra, he was enough of a devotee that he was pleased to be chastised by Ramdas. But he didn't exactly, it wasn't like he was so respectful. So anyway, he continued to perform his deity seva. He didn't stop and have any exchange. Now this is an important point also, because it is acceptable when one is engaged in worshiping the deity and a Vaishnava arrives on the scene to stop that worship and greet the Vaishnava. This is actually acceptable behavior. So at the end of the kirtan, Gunadeva Mishra, he left, he finished his puja, he went on his way. But Krishnadasa Kaviraja's brother got into an argument with Manikatam Ramdas concerning the exchange between the two of them. So Manikatam Ramdas and Krishnadasa Kaviraja's brother, what was his name? Shan. They got into this argument. And his brother, here again, had very, very strong faith in Lord Nityananda, Lord Chaitanya, but did not have such strong faith in Lord Nityananda. And hearing this, Manikatam Ramdas was again deeply wounded. And he became so angry by this double offense, if you will, at the feet of Nityananda, that he broke his flute in half and he left. So we have the most intimate associate of Nityananda being offended by two different personalities, becoming greatly disappointed, breaking his flute, which is his dearmost instrument, and leaving in anger. So this was seen actually as a curse. And the result of this was that Krishnadasa Kaviraja's brother became doomed to lose any attraction, any genuine appreciation for the process of devotional service. That his whole attitude of devotional activities was finished. Krishnadasa Kaviraja, of course, we know he took the side of Lord Nityananda and rebuked his brother. He said to him, these two brothers, and you can find this exact verse there in the 5th chapter of the Adi Leela. These two brothers, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu, are like one body. They're equal in their spiritual manifestation. If you do not accept the divinity of Lord Nityananda, you will fall down. To have faith in one, but to disrespect the other, is the logic of accepting half a hen. Now, of course, Prabhupada alludes to this in other places, the idea of accepting half a hen, namely that you like very much that the egg comes out the back half, because the egg can be useful, it can be sold, it can be eaten, whatever, not by Vaishnavas, but the front half you have to feed it. So an illogical person wants to cut the hen in half and keep the back half for the egg and get rid of the front half that has to be fed. This is very illogical. This is called the logic of accepting half a hen. How can you have half a hen? You cut the hen in half, the hen dies. So in this way, he said it's better that you should be an atheist and deny both brothers than to be a hypocrite and accept one brother over the other. Yes, Bhakta Patrick has captured the point here. The poor hen. Better just leave the chicken alone. Don't mess with the egg and don't cut him in half. So, in this way, Krishnadasa Kaviraj followed the curse of Manikatam Ramdas on his brother with strong chastising words. So, the next thing that happens is the very amazing and what's described by Krishnadasa Kaviraj himself as the crucial point in his life. And this is that evening he has a dream. And in that dream, Lord Nityananda appears. And it's described that Lord Nityananda had on a bluish dhoti and a wonderful silken chadar around his neck, garlanded with a beautiful garland of long flowers, Very, very nice. And this garland had flowers that were of the highest degree of intoxication. And bumblebees were coming around these flowers, trying to get the scent of those flowers. And on his feet were tulsi leaves and beautiful golden ankle bells around his ankles. And on his upper arms were beautiful golden armlets, and around his wrist were beautiful golden wristlets. And he had the most beautiful of effulgent tilak upon his forehead. Surrounding him were devotees singing his glories and fanning him with chamara and peacock fan. And in his mouth was the beautiful red tinge of betel nut. So in this way, Lord Nityananda appeared. And he said to Krishnadas Kaviraj, "O Krishnadas, have no fear. Rise and go to Vrindavan, for there you will attain all good fortune." And then after saying this, he waved his hand in the direction of Vrindavan and then disappeared from the dream of Krishnadas Kaviraja Goswami. Now, let's say you have such a dream. I think you might just pack your bags the next day and head for Vrindavan. And this is exactly what happened. Now, by way of contrast to this, we see the examples of many other personalities. Ramchandra Khan, who tried to arrange for the fall down of Haridas Thakur, Gopal Chakravarti, who tried to arrange for the chastisement of Srinivasa, for the besmirchment of the name of Srinivasacharya. So, in these ways, we see the two different types of moods. And what we find is that Krishnadas Kaviraj, due to his supporting the worship of Lord Nityananda, due to his commitment to the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda, he was given the full blessings of Lord Nityananda, that you should go to Vrindavan and there you will attain all good things. Because he could see that his time in this family life business had become somewhat disturbed. Now, Krishnadas Kaviraj, in speaking about the glories of Lord Nityananda, he speaks about himself in the following terms. "I am more sinful than Jagai and Madhai, and lower than a worm in the stool. Whoever hears my name loses the results of his virtuous deeds, and whoever utters my name commits a sin. Other than Nityananda, could anyone in this world show mercy to one as abominable as me? Nityananda is the incarnation of mercy. He is so intoxicated by ecstatic love, he does not discriminate between who is good and who is bad. He delivers anyone who falls down and surrender before him. Therefore, he has delivered such a sinful and fallen person as me." So this is a very important point here. That Krishnadas Kaviraj says, "I'm lower than Jagai and Madhai. One who even mentions my name loses all good qualities." Now, of course, here in this world, we have a different mood. We're very happy when we see our name in the chat room or someone mentions our name on the film. This becomes greatly satisfying to us. So this is because we are steeped in the false ego of this life, in the duality of this world. And we actually seek that type of glory. This is the shortcoming of material consciousness. But the activities of Krishnadas Kaviraja Goswami, he says, if you even mention my name, you become completely contaminated. So this is a very important point. After this has taken place, then Krishnadas Kaviraj left for Vrindavan. He said, when you go to Vrindavan, you will attain all good things. So imagine the motivating force that Krishnadas Kaviraja Goswami had. When he arrived in Vrindavan, actually it mentions that he spent the remainder of his life there. He never left Vrindavan. Many of us, we have the opportunity to go to Vrindavan, we have to come back. But Krishnadas Kaviraj went to Vrindavan and never returned from Vrindavan. He stayed there till the end of his days. As a matter of fact, his samadhi is there at the Radhakund area. So, at any rate, when he arrived in Vrindavan, he took shelter of all the Goswamis. And in taking shelter of the Goswamis, he began to manifest even more. Rupa, Sanatan, Jiva, Raghunath Bhatta, Gopal Bhatta. He took shelter of all of these Goswamis and began to manifest more so his mood of renunciation, Already he had developed this mood of renunciation, but he began to really strongly manifest it. Now, in due course of time, Krishnadasa Kaviraj took initiation Diksha from Raghunath Goswami. And as a result, he lived out near Radhakund, actually next to Shamakund, at the Manasa Pavana Ghat. This is the place where Radharani would take her midday bath. And he would live there in his later part of his life with the association of Raghunath Goswami. Now, during Krishnadasa Kaviraj's time in Vrindavan, hold on here, we have a question in the chat room. Nams, you have a misconception. Nityananda Prabhu's daughter was named Gangamata, and she was not married to Krishnadasa Kaviraj Goswami. I'm not sure where you got that idea, but that isn't what happened. At any rate, okay. So, while Krishnadasa Kaviraj Goswami was living in Vrindavan at that time, the Vaishnavas would regularly gather together and they would read Chaitanya Bhagavat, because Vrindavan Das Thakur had only recently finished Chaitanya Bhagavat, a few years ahead. And so he would actually associate with all the devotees as they were hearing these different pastimes. Now, the thing is, it was mostly at the Govindaji temple, and the readings were mostly conducted by Haridas Pandit. The devotees were hearing this. Now, the Chaitanya Bhagavat tells all the details of the early life of Mahaprabhu and some of his Madhya Lila. The devotees were very anxious to hear about the later years of Mahaprabhu after he took sannyas and his traveling and when he lived in Puri. So, in that eagerness, Krishnadasa Kaviraj had already developed a reputation as a poet and a writer. They requested that he should write about the later pastimes of the Lord. So, the general mood of an author when he's requested to put a subject down is, yes, I can do that, certainly. This was not the mood of Krishnadasa Kaviraj. Krishnadasa Kaviraj Goswami went to Madan Mohan and he prayed, you give me the ability and the blessings to write this book. I cannot do it on my own. When he prayed like that, the garland that was around Madan Mohan fell off the deity. Now, this is considered when a prayer is being offered or a vow is being made before the deity and a flower falls or a garland falls or something is dropped. This is a confirmation that this will take place. So in this way, Krishnadasa Kaviraj received the blessings from Madan Mohan. Now, we have to keep in mind that by this time, this was not, Chaitanya Bhagavat was not the only biography about Mahaprabhu. Contemporary and near contemporary students and scholars and devotees of the Lord had written different biographical works on Mahaprabhu. We had the Chaitanya Caritamrita by Ramari Gupta. We had the Chaitanya Mangala by Lochan Das Thakur. And Chaitanya Bhagavat, of course, that we just mentioned by Vrindavan Das Thakur. Now, the work of Vrindavan Das Thakur, Chaitanya Bhagavat, was considered the most authoritative work on Mahaprabhu's life. It was very highly respected. But, as I mentioned, it was not, didn't cover all the different pastimes to the detail the devotees were anxious and desirous to hear. So, Vrindavan Das Thakur himself mentions that if I expand all these pastimes, this work will become too voluminous. So, in many of the different leelas and activities of the Lord, he briefly gave some descriptions of it, particularly all of these later ones. So, anxious to hear these pastimes, the devotees in Vrindavan, they asked Krishnadasa Kaviraj, to do this. He received the blessings of Madan Mohan, but that wasn't all. He wanted further blessings. He went to Lokanath Goswami and to Raghunath Bhatta Goswami and begged them also for their blessings. They gave their blessings, particularly Lokanath, on one condition. They would not mention his name. Here again, this is the mood of the devotees. Yes, be sure you put credit in there that I told you this story. No, not at all. The mood of the devotees is that, yes, you can mention that, but don't mention that you heard it from me, because if you put my name in your work, your entire work will be ruined. This was the mood of Lokanath. So, in this way, he compiled the Chaitanya Caritamrita, and he, in his humility, said that he was actually taking dictation from the Lord. This was a wonderful way. So it's important here to note that it's accepted as a Vaishnava point, and Prabhupada encourages it in the Chaitanya Caritamrita, that without the blessings of the Lord and the Vaishnavas, one cannot write the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This goes back to the point we were speaking about earlier, where these scholastic academic scholars who have no devotional qualification write these pastimes down, and it's very dry and usually not very accurate. So Krishnadasa Kaviraj begins each chapter of his Chaitanya Caritamrita with invocations and prayers to Mahaprabhu and to his associates, Advaitacharya, Nityananda, praying for their mercy and their blessings. And he concludes each chapter with requesting the blessings at the lotus feet of Rupa and Raghunath Das Goswamis, his spiritual masters. So, in this way, he praises the Lord going in and praises the Vaishnavas going out. Therefore, it's understood that in between can only be good fortune. He mentions himself, this is a quote from Krishnadasa Kaviraja Goswami, "The activities of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are more wonderful and sweet. That is their nature. When described by Vrindavan Das Thakur, they became a shower of nectar. To describe them again would only be a repetition, and it would show my arrogance, for I do not possess such powers. I shall thus only present a synopsis of those events already described by Vrindavan Das Thakur. I shall do my best to fully describe in this book those incidents mentioned in his outline that he did not develop." So here again, respecting the previous Vaishnava authors, he would only comment briefly on the pastimes that Vrindavan Das Thakur elaborated on. And if Vrindavan Das Thakur did not elaborate on it, then he would get into it quite broadly. So this again is the wonderful mood of a Vaishnava. And in this way he says, "I offer my respectful obeisances to Vrindavan Das Thakur." He continues, just as Vyasadeva compiled Lord Krishna's pastimes in Srimad Bhagavatam, Thakur Vrindavan Das has depicted Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes. I offer my obeisances to his lotus feet and to his book millions upon millions of times. Vrindavan Das Thakur, the authorized biographer of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is equal to Srila Vyasadeva. He has described the Lord's pastimes in such a way as to make them sweeter and sweeter. I shall therefore try to describe these pastimes only in a smaller way, out of fear of this book becoming too big. So here again, showing respect, he did not want to expand on those things which Vrindavan Das Thakur had already worked on. Now, it's interesting to note that when Krishnadasa Kaviraja Goswami began to write the Chaitanya Caritamrita, he was already in an elderly age. The exact age is unfortunately not given. My friend Dhruva Maharaj and I had talked at one point about trying to develop a timeline of the different Vaishnava histories, and it's a very complicated thing to do due to personalities like this that there's very little information on, and due to the fact that there are different chronological timelines given by different historians, even the bona fide historians. So at any rate, but he was quite elderly, that much we know. And he describes himself, "I have now become too old and disturbed by invalidity. While writing, my hands tremble. I cannot remember anything, nor can I see and hear properly. Still I write, and to me this is a great wonder." So this is the amazing thing. This is both a display of his humility and a display of the potency of the Lord in being able to give his devotee the tools by which to complete their devotional service. And we see the result is there. The Chaitanya Caritamrita is considered the most wonderful literature on the activities of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and it's considered a literary gem of all medieval Indian history and historical presentations. So even from a academic point of view, this work is very, very much appreciated. So Krishnadasa Kaviraja Goswami notes that his primary foundation for this Chaitanya Caritamrita, particularly the latter pastimes, because this is what he was encouraged, were the notes of Sarup Damodar, which Raghunath Goswami had completely memorized. You remember that Sarup Damodar would recite these, Raghunath Goswami would hear them, and Raghunath Goswami had memorized them perfectly. And then he recited these to Krishnadasa Kaviraja Goswami. Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives the following explanation of this, that Sarup Damodar Goswami wrote an outline in Sanskrit called the Karicha of Mahaprabhu's later activities. He had Raghunath memorize these verses and told him to preach them throughout the world. This is very amazing. These verses were not written down anywhere else. Sri Chaitanya Caritamrita is the culmination of Sarup Damodar's writings. This is very, very important. So, Krishnadasa Kaviraja Goswami's Chaitanya Caritamrita is accepted as the most authoritative, authentic, and philosophically correct biography of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Every single line is a display of his humility, his enthusiasm, and his devotional commitment to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and to his pastimes. Krishnadasa Kaviraj is noted for the wonderful power of speaking without offending anyone. We see by the mood he has towards himself, such a humble mood, how would he even think to offend anyone else? He is very, very cautious about that in his writings. Although he has full knowledge of all the Vedic scriptures, his books show skill in all the different grammatical errors, Smritis, Nyaya, the Jyotir Shastra, and even if you look carefully in the pastimes of Raghava Pandit and some of the pastimes in the home of Advaita Acharya, in the culinary arts as well. Because his ability to describe different types of foods and the combining of different types of foods and how they're served shows that he was knowledgeable in this as well. This is the thing, as an author has to be very knowledgeable on many different fronts. So, you know, he was a very, very advanced scholar, but very, very strict in his renunciation at the same time. As he says, I am deaf, dumb, wholly illiterate, worldly minded, and lower than a worm in the stool. This is his, and you know, we shouldn't misunderstand that, oh, this guy's really got a problem with self-esteem. He doesn't have any. But this is the true ego, to understand the humble position one has in comparison to the service of the Lord. That one doesn't aspire for any type of glorification or praise or elevation of his position, but at the same time is always very humbly satisfied to just be dasa, 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 nu dasa, the servant of the servant of the servant of the servant. So in this way, he speaks very, very wonderfully like that. I want to read here a quote that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur describes of the Chaitanya Caritamrita. Bhaktisiddhanta was speaking to his own disciples, and he said, if it were to happen that all the books in the world were destroyed, leaving only the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Chaitanya Caritamrita, then the people of this world would still be able to achieve the ultimate goal of life. Even if the Srimad Bhagavatam were lost, leaving only the Chaitanya Caritamrita, there would be no loss to humanity. For that which has not been revealed in the Bhagavat is found in the Chaitanya Caritamrita. The supreme absolute truth is Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the combined form of Radha and Krishna. The Chaitanya Caritamrita is his sound incarnation. The divine mystery of Radharani's divine status and glories are also found therein. Can there be any doubt, therefore, of the supreme status of this piece of transcendental literature, Chaitanya Caritamrita? So this is Bhaktisiddhanta's appreciation of the importance of Chaitanya Caritamrita. Now, of course, we know that Chaitanya Caritamrita was followed by all the subsequent followers. Even Narottam Das Thakur gives a wonderful praise here in his Prem Bhakti Chandrika. We've mentioned many times how this is such an important work. And he mentions in there that Krishnadas Kaviraja Goswami stands out amongst all the devotional personalities, for he is the author of the biography of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He described both Gora and Govinda's Leelas, to which hearing them would cause even a stone to melt. Alas, even so, my mind is not attracted by these works. Now here again we see that humble position that Narottam Das Thakur is manifesting, just as he's following in the footsteps of Krishnadas Kaviraja Goswami. If you read his Prem Bhakti Chandrika, all through it he's berating himself as having no taste for devotional service. This is the real advanced level of a devotee, to think that everyone else is engaged in devotional service, but I have no taste. Confirmed. Krishnadas Kaviraj, of course, was given the title amongst the Goswamis in Vrindavan of Kaviraj. This is a different direction. This means the king of poets, for his wonderful writing ability in that way. And is considered the topmost among the personalities following in the line of Mahaprabhu and Rupa Goswami. Now, we know also that when Krishnadas Kaviraj was in Vrindavan, it was during that time that Srinivasacharya came and was there with Narottam and Shyamananda. And it mentions that Srinivasacharya met Krishnadas and Raghunath Das Goswami along with Sri Raghava when Srinivas visited Vrindavan and spent some time there. And it also mentions, we remember in the past times of Narottam Das Thakur, Shyamananda and Srinivas, when Jiva Goswami sent them with the books traveling, and then the most horrific of incidents that we've spoken about when the books were stolen. So now imagine, before the books are found, in between their being stolen and found, what happens is the word gets out, and the word comes back to Vrindavan that the books have all been stolen. It mentions that Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami was completely beside himself hearing these books had been stolen, and went and jumped into Radhakund. Of course, he was not able to drown himself in Radhakund. He was saved in that situation. But he lived, after being retrieved from Radhakund, in a constant state of anxiety, always anxious to hear about the books. And of course, eventually the books were saved, and Srinivas sent the letters to all the different devotees informing them of this, and this gave some peace and comfort in his very later years to Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. It's interesting to note that in his Braj Leela, because we know all the associates of Mahaprabhu had identities during the Vrindavan Leela of Krishna, and during his Braj Leela he was Kasturi Manjari, one of the most important maidservants of Srimati Radharani. And how appropriate, as he was such a significant person in the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Now, near Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami's house in Jamantpur, near Naihati, is a small temple. And in that temple they have a set of the footprints of Lord Nityananda. And this is said to be the place where he received the dream of Lord Nityananda, right at this spot. And in that place there's also small wooden sandals, which are said to belong to Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. And this is the place also, as I mentioned in the beginning, where the deities that he worshipped of Gornitai are also continue to be worshipped in this day. So these are some of the pastimes associated with the life of Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. As you can see from this, the most important thing that we have from him is the fact that he is the author of Chaitanya Caritamrita, and this was the real culmination of his life's work. And this was able to be done by his immense humility and respect and honor for all other Vaishnavas. So we'll finish there for this evening on these stories about Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. Let's take a look here in the chat room and see what's going on. Let's back up just a little bit there. Any of you that have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat room. I'll do my best to discuss there. Yeah, Davey had something there. What was that? Oh, I see. Okay, all right.
Jamatpur. They're asking if Jamatpur is in West Bengal.
Yes, West Bengal. Jamatpur is in West Bengal. Yes, that's true. Wooden sandals like that. RT has asked the question about wearing silk saris. RT, I can tell you honestly, I have never read anything that prohibits the wearing of silk. Silk is used in the service of the deities. There's many different mentions to silk being offered to devotees throughout the pastimes of the acharyas. It is commonly worn by all Vaishnavas that I know. I have not seen any prohibition that one cannot wear silk. So there's your answer. Now, of course, we do know that as one becomes deeply renounced, they begin to wear simpler and simpler cloth. And to that end, one may not wear silk. But I don't know if there's a prohibition against it. Nothing I've ever seen. No video, Mauricio says. What does that mean, no video, Mauricio? Let us know if the picture is stopped. At any rate, if anyone has any further questions or anything else they'd like to put forward, we'll make an effort to answer them. We're running a little after the hour tonight because we started a little after the hour. And no video and no sound. Seems that we've gone out. Well, is this better now? Picture was frozen there.